Hi, I'm Cindy, and this is the Community Effect Podcast. On this show, we talk about all things teaching and learning, from building authentic relationships to creating a classroom culture where students thrive. We dig into mindset, motivation, engagement, and behavior, because real classroom success isn't just about lesson plans. It's about the community you build. These are conversations for teachers who want more than to just survive. And these are strategies for educators who are ready to take their community to the next level. This is the Community Effect Podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Community Effect Podcast. I'm your host, Cindy Robinson, and I am so excited that you're here with me today because we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is classroom setup. Okay, let's talk about furniture and why you might not want to move it just yet. I don't know about you, but for years, I would get so stinking excited to start designing my classroom. I would think about the theme and the color schemes and how I would create a classroom space that my students would absolutely love. And the second I got my keys to my classroom, the adrenaline, it kicked in. And I would race to the room, crank up my music, and start moving desks. That moment was always exciting for me. It was like a blank slate or a fresh start. But what I didn't realize back then was that I was designing for appearance, not for purpose. I was arranging furniture before I had even thought through how I wanted my classroom to function. And I see this all the time with passionate, organized, and well-meaning educators. They dive into setup mode with the best intentions, rearranging, decorating, printing, labeling, without first pausing to ask, what do I want this space to feel like? What do I want students to be able to do in this space? And how will my classroom system support the kind of learning and community that I'm trying to build? And here's what I've learned. Jumping straight into physical setup without a deeper plan can actually make your job harder in the long run. It's like trying to decorate a house before you figure out how to live in it. You might end up with something that looks nice and feels good, but it doesn't work. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't decorate your classroom, not at all. Heck, I've created some pretty elaborate spaces in my time, and I know how important it is to create an environment that students love to be in. But what I am saying is that there is much more to classroom design than actually meets the eye. It's the stuff that you're not going to see on Instagram or Pinterest. So just stay with me, because I promise this will be a game changer for you. Something that we often forget in the rush is that your classroom isn't just a learning space, it's actually a living space. Your classroom environment is constantly communicating. It's telling them what matters in your room, what kind of behavior is expected, whether student voice is welcome or not, and who belongs and how they're expected to show up. It's where students are going to build friendships and take academic risks, experience conflict and resolution, and ask for help, or even maybe stay silent. This isn't just about aesthetics. It's about neuroscience. According to Dr. Shanker, in Self-Reg, How to Help Your Child and You Break the Stress Cycle and Successfully Engage with Life, he says that physical space directly affects emotional regulation. A cluttered, overstimulated, or chaotic environment can increase cortisol levels and reduce cognitive flexibility. Meanwhile, classrooms that are organized around calm, consistency, and accessibility actually support students' executive functioning, their ability to focus, transition, and self-regulate. And that's why the setup of your room is about more than visibility or theme or colors. It's about how students feel, how they're going to move the moment that they walk into your classroom. Is there space to move, right? Is there a space to collaborate? Is there a space where they're going to be able to reset when they're overwhelmed? And are they able to see evidence that this space was designed with them in mind? And that's why I say, don't touch that furniture yet. Let's get clear on what your classroom needs to do and then we'll set it up to reflect that. So purpose-driven design is all about aligning your physical space with your values and your routines. It's less about where the desks go and more about asking yourself some really important questions. Like, how are my students going to enter the room? Do they need a space, for their backpacks? And is there a calming corner? Am I going to have a check-in? How are they going to move when they first walk in the door? You want to make sure that they're not going to be, running into each other. Where do my transitions happen and how often are they going to happen? So if you have group work, you might need a cluster or anchor spaces for supplies. If you want smoother transitions, you might need to clearly label the zones so that you don't end up with traffic jams. You could ask, do students have independence here? Can they access what they need without asking me? Is my library system intuitive? Is my pencil sharpening station a nightmare waiting to happen, or is there a system for that? Where will you teach from, and where will your students learn? Can you see every student from every spot in your classroom? Is there space reflect student ownership and inclusion? Where is their work going to go? What about this room going to be built with them and by them? When you reflect on these questions before placing a single table, the result is a room that functions with you, not against you. I would always walk into my classroom and I would sit in the middle of the room and I would just imagine what would be happening in that room. I would run like this movie in my head of how kids would be entering and what did I want them to do next. So having my routines in mind ahead of time before ever putting out a single desk or setting up anything else, that was really helpful because it helped me set that room up so that my routines worked seamlessly. I always started with the perimeter. Where did the supplies need to go? What's this wall for? What's this other wall for? Like, I would ask myself all these questions, and then I would start setting up the perimeter. When I set up my student tables, I would always make sure, like, where am I going to be teaching from when I do direct instruction? What can every student see the board from wherever it is that they're sitting in the classroom? I didn't want them to have to turn their chairs or crank their necks or anything like that. I wanted to make sure they had a clear line of sight. So it was really important to me. Once they're at their desks, when they get up to come to community circle, is that going to be a hot mess? Or do I need to establish a new routine that's going to systematically move one group and then another group to the floor so that we can get there without running into each other? So by not setting up my space yet, and by intentionally just thinking about those routines, those things that we're going to do consistently in the classroom, that helps me understand what my flow and my function is. I ask myself other questions too, like, where are my kids going to gather? Where are we going to celebrate? What would the energy feel like in the room? And I know that energy is a combination of things, right? It's a combination of how the classroom looks, how I show up to the classroom, and the energy the kids are bringing. So energy is, a hard one, I think, when it comes to classroom setup. But I want to know what kind of movements and noise are naturally going to happen in the classroom so I can prepare and I can kind of predict what that's going to be like. I made sure that I had supply stations at every one of my pods, so my student tables, so that they wouldn't have to get up and go get things, that they were independent in that manner. I made sure that I had a calming corner, but it was kind of tucked away, but I still had visibility. And I made sure mindful to include that whatever went up on my walls truly was the work that we were going to be doing together or the work that students were creating. When I set my room up this way, I started to have some of the best years ever. And those classrooms were better than any other I had designed before, not because it was trendy, but because it was intentional. I was designing this classroom not for me, but I was designing it for us, for me and my students. So if you're staring at a pile of desks and you're feeling that familiar pull to start arranging, I want you to pause and consider these three questions first. What routines matter most? And how can my space support them? If you want students to grab materials independently, where is the best place for those supplies? If transitions are a struggle, how can you lay out those transitions to minimize chaos? If you're planning on small group work, do you have zones that support that kind of collaboration? Your space should reinforce your systems, not work against them. Question number 2, what feelings do I want students to experience in different parts of my room? Maybe your library is a cozy and calm place, and your small group area is focused and quiet. Your front carpet is a shared space for connection. Design each zone with a feeling in mind, not just a function. Number 3, where does ownership live in my room? This one's big. If everything in the room belongs to you, students feel like guests. But when you build in opportunities for student ownership, shared supplied zones, mailboxes, student showcases, you're slightly telling them this space belongs to you too. And that changes everything. Okay, let's talk about a few common mistakes that make your setup harder later. And these are things that I actually learned the hard way. So I want to share them with you so maybe you won't have to suffer through the same consequences that I did. So one of them is overstuffing the space. If your room is bursting with furniture or visuals, students will be overstimulated and distracted. Lack of flow is another concern. So if students can't move freely without bumping into others during routines, those routines are going to suffer. And you're also going to see a spike in behaviors. The last one is ignoring visibility. If you can see every part of your room clearly from your teaching spots, that's a good thing. If you're not, you're going to run into behavior issues again, right? And we want to do everything that we can to set you up for success. So all of this stuff really kind of eliminates some of those worries that we have as teachers, right? Those behaviors that we don't want to see, the routines that aren't working, the transitions that take forever. If we've got good flow and function to our classroom, it starts to minimize the chances of those things creeping up. Remember, the best classrooms aren't crammed, they are curated, right? You're creating a canvas, not clutter. We don't want a bunch of stuff that the kids aren't going to use. Okay. Here are 3 steps that you can do right now to start building your space with clarity, connection, and community. Number 1, sketch your dream flow. So use a blank piece of paper or a digital tool, depends on you, and mark the zones. Where are you going to keep your supplies? How are kids going to be moving through your classroom? Where are they going to drop off their backpacks? Make sure you know where those spaces are going to be, and think about things like, hey, if I have table groups and they need materials other than what's already at their table, am I going to have all the kids get up and go get them? Because if I do that, I think it's probably going to be pretty chaotic. So maybe I have like leads at each table, and those leads are going to get up and get the materials that they need and pass them out to their table. So where are they going to sit at each one of the tables strategically so they're not getting up and bumping into each other? So it's like taking it a whole nother level, right? Just thinking about all those little things that could possibly happen. Number 2, list your top 5 routines and then ask, does your layout make sense for these routines? Does it make your routines easier, or is it going to make them harder? And so you need to adjust accordingly. And then lastly, sit in the room. Before you move anything, just go in and feel it. Walk around, sit in different spots, let the room speak to you. You'll be surprised what clarity that's going to bring. And I wasn't kidding when I said I would sit there and just stare at walls. I would probably do that for 2 or 3 days. I know that my colleagues probably thought I was just in there wasting time, but I really just had to get a sense for what that room was going to be, how it was going to present itself. Your classroom isn't just where students learn, it's where they become. So don't rush the setup, let it unfold. Design a space that tells your students you belong here. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope that now you can look at your classroom setup in a little bit of a different way. And if no one's told you today, what you do matters, and you matter. I'll see you next time on the Community Effect Podcast. Have a great day.